Hey everybody, one of the main questions that I get asked all the time about GLP-1 medications is, are they safe? If you don't know who I am, I'm Tiffany. I'm a physician assistant. I've been practicing internal medicine for a long time, about 17 years. So GLP-1s were created in around 2006, and we've been using these drugs for the better part of almost 20 years. Now, just like other drugs, these were originally created and used in diabetes, and then as we have used these drugs, we have kind of figured out that they work remarkably well in other areas. So although there's much more to be discovered about GLP-1 meds, one thing that was very obvious to us clinicians at first is that when we were giving people GLP-1 medications for blood sugar control, that they got a handle on their weight much easier. So this led to the study on whether or not these GLP-1s could be used for weight loss alone in someone who is not diabetic. So that being said, I feel very comfortable with GLP-1 medications because we've been using them for such a long time as clinicians, although they've really only been used for weight loss alone for probably the last several years. Now, I want to add that every single medicine has a risk and a benefit. Now, that includes over-the-counter medications and prescription medications, both. And when I'm discussing medications with people in my practice, and especially if we're talking about starting a new medication, I'm always talking to them about whether or not their benefit is going to be more than the risk. I don't think there's any clinician out there that can tell you that there is a drug that you could take that has absolutely zero risk to it. So when I'm thinking about GLP-1 medications for my patients, I'm always thinking about what are the risks and what are the benefits. So obviously I think we know the benefits. If you don't, then obviously weight loss, decreased levels of inflammation, and it also helps your body utilize sugar better within your body. But what are the risks? So let's talk about those, because there are some very real risks out there to GLP-1s. So in somebody who is non-diabetic, when they go to use a GLP-1, GLP-1s work their hormone and they work kind of in your pancreas. So some people can experience an irritation of their pancreas. It is a very small amount of people that actually get pancreatitis, which is a very painful condition of your pancreas, but it can happen. We also know, because of the way that GLP-1s work, that they are going to slow down the transit of your bowels. So everything slows down. So a lot of people who are on GLP-1 therapy get a lot of constipation. Now, for the most part, you can make that better by drinking more water, taking in more fiber, etc. But there is a very small percentage of people who can actually get severe constipation and even kind of a paralysis of their bowels. So again, it's less than 0.1% of people get this side effect, but the risk is still out there. So obviously I know these risks sound very scary, and you're thinking, well, then why in the world would you be promoting or telling us about GLP-1s when it sounds like they're scary medicines to take? But I think you have to think about it like we are intervening early with medications now to prevent disease later, because we know that obesity in and of itself is a risk factor for at least 13 different types of cancers. It's a risk factor for diabetes, a risk factor for PCOS, fertility issues. And I think if we think about it where we are going to go ahead and intervene, we're going to try to prevent some of these issues from coming up where we don't have to treat them later. I think that the benefit of GLP-1 medication far outweighs the very slight risk that you can run for taking these medications. Now, each person has to decide for themselves, and obviously I am a PA, but I'm not your PA, so this is not medical advice, this is educational only. So it's very important that you work with your provider and talk with them about the risk and benefits and whether or not that this is something that would be right for you. But I will say that the GLP-1s have been around a really long time, and as a provider, I feel very comfortable with these medicines. However, there is no medicine out there that does not have a risk to it. So, no one can promise you that. If they're telling you that there's no risk to medicines, then that's just not true. But I do think there is overwhelming benefits to GLP-1 medication, especially when we're using them to prevent other diseases later on. So think about these things when you're thinking about your weight loss journey and whether or not we want to use GLP-1s as a tool to kind of get you in the right direction. So you're coming up with some great questions, so I'd love to continue to answer these. So if y'all have got any good questions, just drop them in the comments or shoot me a message. So y'all have a good night. Thanks.